Well, good morning. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a good day. My guest today has spent more Sunday mornings on the air here on TV6 than any person ever. In fact, no one even comes close. If you need more of a clue than that, you'll just have to wait and see. It's coming up right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Now, here's your host, Don Ryan.
You know, in the middle part of the last century, a TV show came on the air here at TV6, and it continued every Sunday morning until earlier this year. That's over 50 years, and there's a good chance it's the longest running show ever anywhere. Of course, I'm talking about Finland Calling. This morning, a conversation with a very familiar face on TV6 and throughout the Upper Peninsula. The person responsible for keeping that show on the air for all those years, Carl Pellenpaa. Carl, welcome back to Sunday Morning on TV6.
It's good to be here, Don.
It's really nice to see you.
This brings back good memories
It
here.
does, you know, it really does, you know, and we want to talk about Finland Calling, but I want to reminisce about some other things as well and actually get folks to even know some of your early history a little better. You know, there are some similarities in our career. One of them, we were both born in Ishpeming.
Right.
And do you know that there were 6 people that I know of from Ishpeming who had some part to play here on TV6? Can you name some of the others? This is kind of an unfair thing to do.
Roy Peterson, number 1.
Darby 06, of course.
Darby 06, yeah. Chip Tasson.
Yep. Scott Garso went on to become a sportscaster. Carol Anderson.
Yeah, my goodness.
And you know, I think Mo Brown actually.
Mo Brown was here, yeah.
I'm not sure he was an employee,
Bunny bread
but
commercials.
he did. Yeah, he did some stuff. So, quite a few people out of Ishpeming who had a connection. The other thing is, you and I both started our broadcasting career at WJPD, which is now WIAN. But But you were there before me. When did you start?
1948, June of 48. Graduation ceremonies or commencement ceremonies were on Friday. I started on Monday, and Paul Crowley had hired me to. I became a DJ and 17 years of age.
As I understand, your English teacher Ben Renz had some kind of a demonstration going on, and that's how they found you.
His class, we had to go into the next room and read, and he had a microphone there and a speaker in, and I came out of there after reading one day, and there was Paul Crowley, and he said, "Would you like a job in radio?"
There you go.
There it was.
You know, and one difference, I dreamed of being a radio broadcaster when I was a kid. You didn't. You dreamed of being a baseball player.
I wanted to be a baseball player. That was my goal. And
not just a baseball player, but a major league baseball player.
Major league. Nothing I wanted to. I didn't want to do anything else except that.
And you actually had a shot at it. Tell us about that.
Well, the Boston Braves had a tryout camp in Negaunee. And I applied, and there was quite a few guys, and must have been 50, 60 kids throwing and running and hitting and so forth. And I had a chance to start the game. And after I pitched, the scout came and said, "Are your parents here?" And my dad happened to be there. And he said, "I want to talk to you. Come to your house." And signed a contract for a Class D ball club in Virginia, Bluefield, West Virginia.
Okay.
It was a Class D ball club of the Boston Braves, and I was to report to spring training the following March, and my dream was coming up.
Yeah, but it didn't get fulfilled, did it?
No, my wife Doris, she was my best friend, was going to nursing school in Chicago at the time, and I said, "I'm going rabbit hunting tomorrow." She said, "Don't go. Don't go." I went, and I was taken for a rabbit and shot in the head, neck, and shoulders with a shotgun. And that was in October. In December, all of a sudden, I couldn't move my right arm. Some of the pellets had lodged in between the bones of my shoulder, developed bursitis or whatever, and that was it. I went to spring training for 2 weeks, courtesy of the Braves, on a train from Ishpeming to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Spent 2 weeks, couldn't even pick up a baseball, and they gave me the money to get home on a bus.
So the dream was over. But
the dream was over, but I didn't give up. I hooked up a punching bag in my basement, and dum-dum-dum, dum-dum-dum, and I got back, so I could still throw. I didn't have a fastball anymore,
Yeah.
but I could throw a good curve and a knuckleball, and I went out for a Giants tryout camp in Iron Mountain. Again, I started that game and did well. And a scout came up and said, it's too bad you don't have a fastball.
Yeah.
And that was it.
And that was it. And you didn't jump right from there to television. You worked in mining for a while. You were an underground miner.
Well, after I got home in 1950, I ended up with appendicitis, and sitting there in the hospital, or laying in the hospital, I think that's it. My dad, my brother, my brother-in-laws, uncles were all at the Cliff Shaft mine. I applied, and I started there in July of 1950.
But once again, something else intervened. You wound up going in the Army.
Well, that was during that stint in the mine.
Right.
In '53, January, went to Uncle Sam's Army and ended up in Korea for a year, which I didn't mind. It was okay. The conflict had ended over there, thank goodness. And then I went back, and then big layoffs in '58. There I was. I went to North Chicago and applied at Abbott Lab for a job. And I walked in, and the lady was at her desk, and a guy was doing some filing in behind her, and I said, "Are you hiring by any chance?" He said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Upper Michigan." He said, "You're hired." His name was Swanson.
Okay.
And he and I became good friends. And I worked there for about 3 months, and Doris was pregnant with our last child, and my mother became ill, and I had to leave. And then I started back in radio again.
Okay. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Back
All
with
right.
more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. Our guest this morning is Carl Pellenpaa, longtime host of Finland Calling and here at TV6 for many years. By the way, let me mention right now that coming up this Wednesday at 7:30, there will be a special show featuring conversations with Carl and a lot of friends, including me. So it'll be a very interesting show this Wednesday at 7:30.
Right on.
We had kind of dropped off there where you were kind of laid off in the mine and went back to work in radio. Those were the days when you were on the highway, wasn't it?
Yeah, the studio was in a mobile home, and the studio faced the highway, and I would say hello in the mornings to the green Chevy going left,
Right.
and a red Ford going east, and they were tooting the horns in heavenly days. They kept me busy just saying hello to hello, and then I'd get phone calls, and one phone call rings a bell is that she said, "The fella in the green Chevy going west took the garbage bag instead of his lunch."
We better jump ahead to TV. You went to work at TV6 in 1961, I believe.
1961.
Your first job was?
First job was working the camera, behind the camera.
Okay.
The process then was learn what's happening behind the camera for at least a month and a half, to maybe even 2 months,
Okay.
which I did. And running camera, Bruce Turner was doing the news at the time. Darby had his kids show at 5 o'clock, and running camera for that. And then I was told, okay, and I was hired to do sports. But instead, they put me doing weather.
Okay.
And, yeah, you've done the
I
weather.
did the weather, yeah, for a long
I
time.
mean, we're both not meteorologists.
No. There were no graphics, no anything back then.
No, nothing. No. But we made it.
And one of the things you had to do at that time was pour a glass of beer.
Oh, yeah.
Not easy.
Not easy. You had to read the teleprompter and pour and have a good pour. I mean, with a head on it.
Right.
Well, lots of luck.
Tough work. We better move along. We've Finland Calling came along in 1962, and it really wasn't. It was really the idea of someone outside the station. Isn't that right? Originally, a travel agent.
Travel agency convinced John Borgen, our GM at the time, if there was a Finn show, it would be successful because the population of the Upper Peninsula back then in the 1960 census was 300,000, 27% first or second generation Finn. So if there was a Finnish program that would induce them, those Finns and their spouses and family to travel to Finland. And that's how it started. And Eugene Sinervo and I were told, get it started. So
And you did.
March 25, 1962, it went on the air as a half hour.
And you actually had a trip to Finland that first summer.
That
didn't
first
you?
summer, yes.
So-
That was the first of 34.
34, that's amazing. Now you actually had a little falling out with TV6 about that time, so you left for a short time, didn't you?
Well, we had an assisting general manager, I'll not mention names, and he said, we want you back to sports, back to weather. Blatz Beer is very upset that you're doing Busch Beer commercials instead of their commercials.
Okay.
And I said, well, I'll tell you what, find yourself a weatherman and a sportsman because I'll see you later. And I went back to JPD for a while.
But they called you back, a new general manager
Yeah,
came
3
along.
months later,
Yeah.
Jim
Tomlin.
Tomlin
Right.
was the GM at the time.
And the show really changed over the years, didn't it? Originally, you didn't have guests.
Oh, it was primarily guests,
Okay,
but it was all in Finn.
okay.
And our Finn, Eugene and my Finn, was not very great. But I've learned over the years to retain some of those words and know what to say and so forth. But guests were primarily, because that was the message, when you have somebody coming in to visit you from Finland, let us know and bring that guest to the show.
And you had some amazing guests,
Wow. I'll say.
presidents and ambassadors.
I just had Larry Shabbat call me the other day and he said, do you remember Rainier von Fiant? What a
remember
good
the
Finn
name.
name, isn't it?
Yeah.
He was a guest of mine. I had a Professor Puntila who spoke and everything was going right over my head. I didn't know what he was saying, but we made it.
You started your Finland calling dances,
In 1964.
and you had a pretty interesting episode at the first dance.
Well, the armory, Ishpeming Armory was packed, and right in the middle of the affair, boom, fellow dropped dead. And I was going to quit.
That would be enough to make you quit.
Well, exactly. My goodness. Like, it was my fault that they came and
Right.
Paul Ramseth convinced me that, no, hey, they died with their boots on. So I conceded, had another dance, and a woman dropped dead.
Oh boy.
But knock on wood, that was the last time.
And they became amazingly successful. I recall actually reading in your book that you had one in South Range where there were
South Range in 1966, I don't have the exact number, but there was way over 800, and that floor was moving.
right.
And they just kept going up because we quit selling tickets.
Yeah, amazing. We have to take one more break. Back with more with Carl after we take this break. Talking with Carl Pellenpaa this morning. Going to run out of time before we run out of memories. One additional about the Finland Calling was the open houses.
Yeah, we had.
Talk about those.
We asked for 4 hours on a Sunday morning from 8 until noon, and I think there were 4 of them, and invited people to come in, and we had coffee and coffee bread for them, and Trinary toast and so forth, and you were part of those back
Right.
then, and shake hands with people, and
Right.
we offered door prizes every once in a while, and it was a great time.
And there were hundreds of people that came through. I just remember it was just overwhelming.
They came all the way from Ashland, Wisconsin, and east of Munising, and
One of the memories I have is well after that, being in one of the supermarkets or something and somebody saying, I saw you on TV this morning. I thought, well, I wasn't on TV this morning. It was you running highlights from the open house shows.
Right on.
And we have to tell the story about the fact that I did guest host one time, even though I don't speak a word of Finnish or understand it.
You were a great host of Finland Calling
right.
when I was home with the mumps,
Right,
and we communicated by telephone,
right.
and they had all the music ready to go, but you had to fill in,
Right.
and not in Finn, of course, but in English,
For certain, yeah.
and It was a live show.
I remember the general manager telling me you have to do it. I said, I can't speak a word of Finnish. He said, well, you're all we have.
There you go.
And of course, it was a live show, as you said,
It was
and,
live.
you know, somebody had to be to make it work.
Yep.
You know, there were just so many things I'm not going to get to. You did Upper Michigan Today. You had Tom Jones as a guest. That had to be fascinating.
Yes, absolutely. That was unreal to sit all of a sudden and see this gentleman with a great big silver cross around his neck.
Yeah.
And that just blew me right out. That's the one interview that I have to say I blew.
Really?
He just shook me up. He was such a nice guy. So.
You know, it's you know, I kind of worry about getting a show a week here. You had to do one a day, Monday through Friday back in those days.
But that was fun. It was Upper Michigan Today, the people and places of the UPs.
Right. And you did one with Santa Claus, too, as I recall, which kind of upset the phone company.
Oh, yes. We had arranged for, I don't remember his name now, but he was Santa Claus, and when he walked in the building, you believed in Santa Claus. So the engineers worked up and so forth and fixed the camera like we're going to the North Pole. And I asked him, would you mind if some kids called and asked and told you, Santa Claus, what they would like? Sure. Polson from the Michigan Bell said, don't you ever do that again, because we blew up the bell system.
Yeah. And of course, the other great memory from those days were the March of Dimes telethons.
Oh, that was great.
You were involved in many of those.
And that's when the Packers came, and the Lions even came and had a chance. It was the UP right here in the studio.
Remember the chaos in the studio? I mean, you have rock bands playing, and you're trying to get organized and get ready for what's coming up next. And
you had to be on a stick, really on a stick.
The other, you know, and television was so different back then. Of course, the cameras were black and white.
Give me a couple of bucks. Give me a couple of bucks.
Yeah, Charlie Hansen. Yeah. Yeah, it's just kind of fun to think back on those. You remember some of the other live commercials we had to do?
Oh, yes. I remember I was doing a commercial. Remember Ingrid Bartelli's kitchen set was in the studio?
Yeah.
And I was standing by that refrigerator, and Al Mackey, engineer, was running the cheat sheet. And the cheat sheet broke right during the, and he's only about 5'6" anyhow, and he's pulling, and try not to laugh. Try not to laugh. And I made it, but Bruce Turner said, he did the same thing. He said, that's the worst commercial I ever done.
You know, there are so many memories. As I was saying in the break, you and I could sit here and talk for an hour if we had it, but you know, it's just not that way. You served on the county board, you were chairman of the county board, you were appointed to the State Highway Commission. There were just so many, you know, people are going to remember you for Finland Calling, but there was a lot more to Carl Pellenpaa than that. The other thing I have to say is, you know, in reading your book again, family was always first for you, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely, no question about it, no question. Doris and Wendy and Carl and Diane, and then the 4 granddaughters, and
even
awesome.
Before that, your parents.
Oh, my
aunts
parents
and uncles
and in-laws,
yeah,
and the outlaws. It was awesome.
It was great for you to come in and talk to us this morning.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Don.
Okay, maybe we can do it again sometime.
All right.
Okay, thanks a lot, Carl.
You bet.
Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. Well, this has been a day from memory, so let me share one more. As a young man, I wanted to be a broadcaster and worked at several area radio stations, but I never had the confidence to apply for a job in television at TV6. Then one day, fate stepped in. In 1965, the Negaunee City Group planned a week-long centennial celebration, and the committee in charge contracted with TV6 to produce a 30-minute film highlighting the week's activities. To this day, I don't know how they thought of me or why, but someone from the station called and asked if I would be interested in helping out with that project. To say I was surprised is an understatement, since I had never worked on a film or anything like it. Even though I didn't know what the job would require or if I could actually do it, I said yes. To be working with TV6 in any capacity was like a dream. This was just a temporary part-time assignment, but who knows where it might lead. I would be working with Bruce Sorry, someone I had never met, who was a veteran photographer with TV6. My job was to develop a script that would make the final production look like a complete show when it was done. I would also do some live stand-up segments on camera and record the narration that would tie it all together. For the stand-ups, I would appear in front of the camera and offer some comments that would introduce or set the stage for each of the special activities like the big parade or the Miss Negaunee Centennial Beauty Pageant. For the type of video equipment that's available today, it would be something I could do at home on my computer. But it was much, much different back then. We had to work with movie film, sound on film, which, as the name implies, had the soundtrack right on the film. That would include things like my stand-ups or the sounds of the marching bands in the parade. But a lot of the events didn't have appropriate sound to go with them, so Bruce would shoot silent film that could be narrated over later. To make the final production, all of that film was edited together. I recorded the narration track to cover the silent film segments, and then it was sent to a lab in Chicago where they turned it into a film with a complete soundtrack that could be shown on a 16mm projector. You'd be hard-pressed to find one of those today, but 16mm movies were common for commercial and industrial use back then. We got the job done. I have to admit it really wasn't great, but considering the amateur production team, it was okay, and Bruce and I learned a lot which would come in handy on some projects we got involved with later. So Negaunee had its centennial film, and I had my first experience at putting words and pictures together. But as it turned out, the project would ultimately have a lot more meaning for me. It opened the door for a full-time job at TV6. That's how it all began. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Well, sharing memories with Carl Pellenpaa was great fun for me this morning. I hope you enjoyed it too. Carl has been both a TV pioneer and a mainstay here in Upper Michigan. And don't forget, TV6 has a special show featuring Carl and some of his friends coming up next Wednesday night at 7:30. Hope you put that on your calendar and tune in. And of course, Thanksgiving Day is coming up this Thursday. Hope it's a wonderful day for you and your family. Today's show is set to roll, so it's time for us to move out. Have a great day. I'll look forward to seeing you again next Sunday morning.